Hello and welcome to yet another episode of History Time. In the last month, there has been a major controversy concerning the laddus being served in the Tirumala temple. People living in Tamil Nadu, though they have a lot of faith in the temple, today for them it is a problem that concerns some other state. But around 70 years ago, if this controversy had erupted, Madras city would have been majorly involved in solving it and in tackling it. Indeed, for 250 years, the city of Madras had a great role to play in the administration of the Tirumala temple. Let us see what that history was. Venkatam or Tirumala is an ancient temple. We all know that there are references to it from Sangam poetry. Later, Pallavas, the Yadavas, several other rulers such as those of the Vijayanagar Empire lavished their generosity on this temple, assigning large amounts of land and gifts. And soon, Tirumala became an exceedingly well-to-do temple. In the reign of King Krishnadeva in the beginning decades of the 16th century, the temple reached its zenith with the emperor making several contributions to it. But by 1565, Vijayanagar had been defeated in the Battle of Talikota when the 5 confederate states of Berar, Bidar, Ahmednagar, Golconda and Bijapur came together to defeat it. Thereafter, Hampi, the capital, was abandoned and the rulers of Vijayanagar shifted to Penukonda and from there to Chandragiri. They became a very minor kingdom indeed, but they continued to hold control over the Tirumala temple. And this is how the situation continued till the 1650s, when the Golconda rulers defeated the Vijayanagar kings, and thereafter the temple came under their administration. The Golconda rulers, however, did not interfere with what was going on in the temple and left it at that. But in 1686, Golconda itself was defeated by Aurangzeb, who then took it over. And thereafter, the whole of South India came under the administration of the Nizams of Hyderabad and their vassals, the Nawabs of Arcot. In fact, it was the Nawab of Arcot who would become responsible for the administration of the Tirumala temple. This was around the time that the British were becoming slowly powerful. They had first come to Madras in 1639, and they had been given the grant to build a fort here by Raja Venkatapati III, who was the penultimate ruler of the Vijayanagar Empire, ruling from Chandragiri. He was also then the administrator of the Tirumala temple. But by the 1750s, the British East India Company was exceedingly powerful, and the Nawab of Arcot decided to assign all the revenues of the temple to the East India Company in order to square off his own debts. Thereafter, the company became the administrator of the Tirumala temple. The company considered it a matter of prestige to ensure that all the festivals and processions took place in the temple without any interruption. It felt that if it did not hold up the traditions, people would feel that it was not a responsible administrator. And there were challenges. The Nawab of Arcot's younger brothers waged war on the Tirumala temple in the 1750s, no doubt to gain control over its wealth. And on both occasions, the East India Company had to send an army from Madras to protect the temple. But when Hyder Ali became powerful, the company could do nothing, and the temple came under the control of Hyder Ali for a few years. In 1792, when Hyder Ali's son Tipu Sultan was defeated, the temple went back to the Nawabs of Arcot. And in 1801, when the Nawab of Arcot signed off his entire kingdom to the British, Tirumala came under the British once again. This was when collectors were sent from Madras to study the revenue of the temple and also to administer it. Among the first was George Stratton. Even today in Georgetown, you have Stroughton Muttaya Mudali Street. It is a corruption of Stratton Muttaya Mudali, Muthaya Mudali was the Dubash of George Stratton. George Stratton, on becoming collector of Chittoor, went to Tirumala and first gave a questionnaire to the hereditary trustees of the temple. This is known as the Sawal Jawab, and in 1803 this was documented, and thereafter for the first time the history of the Tirumala temple was written down in English. Even today, when there is litigation concerning the temple in the high courts, this is a very important document that is brought forward as proof and as explanation. After George Stratton, we also had Graham. Even today we have Graham's Road in the Egmore area. This is a corruption of Graham. H.S. Graham was the collector of Tirumala and Chittoor, and even today in that region we have Graham's Pet. For a long time, for almost 90 years, the East India Company administered the temple. And then in 1841, the company took a very important decision. It came to the conclusion that it was not in the business of administering temples, and most of the temples, in fact all the temples, were handed over to local religious mutts. In the North Arcot district, there were 188 temples, and together they had a collective revenue of 32,000 rupees per annum. The Tirumala temple alone had revenue of 1 lakh per annum in 1841. So the company hesitated as to whom it should be handed over to. And finally, it selected the Hathiramji Mutt, which is a mutt that owes its allegiance to North India. And they had their presence in Tirumala, and the temple was handed over to them. Thereafter, there was numerous amounts of litigation concerning maladministration. And finally, the Madras government in 1933 enacted the Tirumala Devasthanam Act, and therefore took over the administration of the temple. Thereafter, several improvements were made thanks to Madras. In 1944, what we today recognize as the Ghat roads leading all the way up to Tirumala were laid. The company that did it was Gannon Dunkerley, a British engineering firm of Madras, and the man who planned it was Rao Bahadur A. Nageshwara Iyer, who was a secretary in the government in charge of road works. And the first vehicle that drove up the Ghat roads was by a Madras man, M. Rajagopal Naidu, who ran Rajagopal Motor Works on Mount Road and would later found the Halda Typewriter Company. He started the first bus company in Tirumala, Sri Venkateshwara Bus Union, and therefore it was his bus that he drove personally that went up the Ghat road for the first time. Interestingly, he was also the man who began the first cinema theatre in Tirupati, Pratap Talkies. In 1947, India became independent. But even 14 years before that, a group of Telugu-speaking worthies of the city had met in a large house in Mylapore called Sri Bagh. And they had come to form what was called the Sri Bagh Pact. And that was that when India became independent, the Telugu-speaking regions of what was then Madras Presidency would be separated into a state called Andhra. And in 1947, when independence came, they renewed their efforts. It helped that the Chief Minister of that time was Tanguturi Prakasam, who was a Telugu-speaking man himself. And in 1948, he pressed the central government to create Andhra. Nothing much happened. But in 1952, Potti Sriramulu went on a fast unto death, demanding the formation of Andhra. At that time, the Chief Minister of Madras State was C. Rajagopalachari, and he was not a person to bend to such threats. Potti Sriramulu died, and there were huge riots in the Telugu-speaking regions of Madras Presidency. Thereupon, the central government, led by Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru, decided to reorganize the states on the basis of language, and in 1953, Andhra came into existence. The question was, where was Madras going to go? Was it going to be a part of New Andhra, or was it going to be a part of the old Madras province? The Telugus started a protest saying, Madras Manade, Madras is ours. The Tamils began a counter saying, Madras Namade. Mapo Sivagyanam, the great leader, was at the forefront of demanding that Madras should remain with Madras state. He even coined a phrase saying that we may give up our heads, but we will not give up our capital. And he also, for good measure, included that we will not give up Venkatam or Tirumala. He demanded that that too should be a part of Madras state. But in 1953, Andhra eventually came into existence and Kurnool became its capital. The question of Tirumala, however, hung in the balance between 1953 and 1957. The government of India formed the H.V. Pataskar Committee to study the border issues. And finally, in 1957, Tirthani was given to Madras and Tirumala went to Andhra Pradesh. And it still remains with that state. Imagine what if this controversy had broken out 70 years ago or more, what would have been the repercussions in Madras? Even today, there is a tradition that continues from this city. Every month in Puratasi, which is this month, umbrellas are sent from Madras to Tirumala. The umbrellas are made in Chindadripet and sent all the way to Tirumala. It is a re-establishment of that link which had existed for so many years. If you like this episode, like it, share it with your friends and subscribe to this channel. I promise to soon be back with you with further episodes from the history of Madras, that is Chennai. Bye for now.